today we have Miss Simone Napper and Jessica Hook. So Simone is an alumni. She studied here and has got a great journey through teaching, which I'm sure she'll tell you about. And Jess, this is a funny one. We actually had another speaker booked in, and they sadly had to pull out today. And Jess has agreed about an hour ago to come here after her teaching prac. She's a fourth year student and one of our student ambassadors. So like, Jess, please help. And she's just finished her prac and come here. So would you be able to introduce us, Simone, first?
So like Charlie said, my name is Simone Napper. I graduated from the Strathfield campus here with a Bachelor of Education in Early Childhood and Primary. So I did the double degree, which was a 4-year degree. From that, I left university and managed from interview to get a permanent position as a primary school teacher in a small school in Sydney here. From that, after 3 years, high aspirations, I put myself out there, shadowed my great mentors at my school and was able to get a permanent assistant principal position at another school in Sydney. So I've done 3 years there as assistant principal, and then currently I am seconded for 12 months with a unit inside the New South Wales Department of Education's head office in Parramatta. That unit's called CC, so they're the Centre for Education, Statistics and Evaluation, and I'm helping on some of the learning and development projects there. And so that's my current journey from my degree here at Strathfield.
Fantastic. Simone sounds like the long-term goal. I'm the short-term goal. So my name's Jess, as Charlie introduced me before. I am also studying, similar to Simone, the Bachelor of Education, Early Childhood and Primary, but at our North Sydney campus. Currently, I'm on my final placement, so I'm in my final year, final semester, and at the moment doing my final placement just at a school around the corner in Strathfield.
That's how you got here so quickly.
Yes. Finished my marking, rushed over. So yes, that's what I'm currently doing, and I'm looking to graduate and then start applying for different positions and my teaching number.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, thank you both for coming. Really appreciate having you here. I guess it's a good time to get started now, but again, I encourage anyone online listening or anyone in the audience to ask any questions, because maybe I'll ask something and you want a bit more detail on that topic. Feel free, just raise your hand or wave or something, get my attention. All right, so the first question, I'll start with you, Simone. Can you tell us what a typical day of work is for you? And I guess you've been a teacher and you're also now working in the department, so maybe you could do a summary of both.
Yeah, so I'll do a bit of a cap of each of the positions I've held, and I'm sure Jess will fill in more about that classroom teacher side for us. But, you know, a day in the life of a teacher, you coming in early, this idea of 9 to 3 does not exist. I'll put that out there now.
Coffee?
Coffee, straight up. That's the first thing I'm starting my day with. So to school nice and early, usually an hour before it starts, going into your classroom, setting up all your resources, getting out your lesson plans, setting out your day ready to go. You've got those wonderful kids that just you're drawn to that come in and you're teaching during the day. Recess and lunch, you may be on a duty. You could be training some kids for soccer, for PWSA sport. You could be running creative arts, dancing in the hall. In the afternoon, you're of course doing the marking that Jess was doing this afternoon. And then depending on your interests and your expertise from other areas in your life, you may run after school extracurricular things. You may like to be a part of your school's P&C meetings. So there's lots of avenues outside that 9 to 3. Beyond that, so taking on an executive role, an assistant principal, which is if you're a person who's aspiring for that progression and wanting to take on more positions, it's definitely something anybody can do, and don't think it's something you have to be later on in your life. I was 27 when I took on an assistant principal position, and we all come with our own expertise and knowledge. So in that role, I have a stage or a team that I supervise of teachers that are on class. So they were stage 3, 5 and 6, and I would support them in their everyday practice, helping them in how to program and plan, best teaching practice, reporting processes and things like that. And then my current position at CC, I assist with content development around a software called Plan 2, which is a literacy and numeracy assessment software, and also out doing adult training with teachers across the state in different sectors for the NAPLAN online transition across the state.
Fantastic. So my day on my placement, usually I'm up at about 5:30, 5:45 because I live at Lane Cove. And so I get up then and I leave the house at about 6:40, get on my bus, get to Burwood, walk over to Strathfield because it takes the same time to catch the train. I have to wait 10-15 minutes for my train in the morning at that time, so I just do the walk to Strathfield and get to school at around, what time do I get to school? Around 7:50, 7:55. My mentor teacher's normally there around 7:15. And then, like Simone said, it's planning for the day. So making sure I've printed everything, got all my resources prepared. A lot of the time you'll have things before school anyway, so you might have a duty. So sometimes we'll be on, our school's got a school crossing, so we do crossing duty, walkway duty. So different teachers are allocated on different days to do a morning duty in the playground, and then also obviously recess and lunch as well. Then today, seeing as it was raining, our kids were in the classroom
Going mental.
8:30 in the
They
morning.
love it though. They
Going
love it.
mental. So we had them playing Uno, playing Snap, doing some drawing. Then once we start the day, we do our morning block of English, and that's usually some reading, some writing. There are rotations for reading as well. And as I said, recess. Raining today, which meant everyone's on duty because all your kids are in the classroom. So we do half and half, so we get 20 minutes to go do whatever we need, which for me was getting my marking done. So marking, and then we had maths after that, then science, and today what my year 2 children were doing, they were looking at position in maths, so learning left and right and how to follow a path on a simple map.
Some people still don't know left and right.
Some people still don't know that, and it's actually really confusing when you're doing it on a map sometimes, especially for little people. But they managed. And then this afternoon they did a little bit more science and some topic talks, which is always fun. So they get to write about a topic. This week was an allocated topic, so we gave it to them. Why a family is important, and then you get to hear their ideas about that topic, and it's a really good writing, speaking and listening activity for them. So, yeah.
So does anyone have any questions after that? That's just one question down. Any more? Are we happy for us to, yeah?
So how does your mentor help you during the day?
That's a great
Oh,
question.
that
I'll
is a really
just
good
before
one.
you go, I'm going to repeat it just in case it didn't come through, but the question was, how does your mentor help you through the day?
So they help in lots of different ways. Usually, like the expectation is to make sure that everything's prepared at least the day before. So they'll have looked through what you've planned for the day prior to it happening anyway. So they might give feedback on, so my maths lesson for instance, feedback on whatever I have planned. So they might say, oh, actually, that activity might take too long. I don't think they'd be able to get that done in the time. Maybe adjust it a little bit in these ways, or this is a different idea, similar to what you've done, but this is something to consider that you might take into consideration. On the actual day, they'll give you lots of feedback. I'm at the end of my prac now, so there's not too much that they have to do. But early on, there were things with classroom management. So if the class are getting out of control, and I may not have felt like they were, but she might think, oh, for my expectation of my class, because it is their class and we need to respect that, they might think, no, I'm going to put them into line. So my mentor teacher might say, excuse me, how do we be respectful, or what should you be doing, and just remind them. And that served as a reminder for me as well. Oh, okay, so I should have called them into line then. They were getting too loud. And different classrooms, different mentors will be different anyway. And every teacher teaches differently. It's not to say that way is wrong, but we all learn from each other. But when we have our own classrooms, you might do it a bit differently. Your noise level might be different to the teachers next door, and that's not necessarily wrong. It's just you might think that that's acceptable for your class when they're doing group work or whatever it may be that they're doing in the class at that time.
Great. Well, I've got more questions, might rip into. Simone, I guess because you've finished your ACU, yesterday, a little while ago. What was your experience? Because I know this is something a lot of students would be thinking about before uni, during. What was your experience actually getting a job after you graduated or before you graduated?
Yeah, so the process has changed a little bit from when I left university. So when I left uni, you write your CV and you would pop it into different schools that you were interested in doing casual teaching for. They may be schools that you've done prac teaching at. Quite often your mentor, you build that really strong rapport with them and they see in you that you've got the potential and they'll say, I think you're fitting in as part of our school community. We'd love for you to come back in a casual capacity once you've got your casual number. My first casual was my prac schools, and I think for a lot of students leaving ACU, that is their first person because they're your mentor. You also feel most comfortable then for your first casual day when now you don't have that second person in the classroom with you. If it is that school that you've built that rapport with, you feel that community around you to support you through that. Building on that, then looking at application processes which are different for every sector, whether you were looking for independent Catholic or New South Wales public system. But applying through those sectors with their processes to get your casual number will be different for each one, and you do have to apply to each sector separately. So there's not one body that will give you a number for all three. And then from your casual process, you may be offered temporary positions in your position. So there may be a maternity leave or something that's coming up and they'll offer you something. But you can also apply then for permanent positions. Speaking from being in the public education sector, we have Teach New South Wales or Jobs New South Wales sites that you can look into there for positions. Some are of long-term temporary, some are permanent positions. When you're part of the Department of Education, we have a newsletter that goes out each Friday via email. That's called School Biz. There are temporary positions that are advertised on there, plus secondment things, such as the one that I applied for to go into CC for a year, a unit in the department. So there's many avenues that you can apply for. So for me, I was very lucky that I found a job ad and I applied for with my mentor out of my 4th year prac. She drilled me over and over to prepare me for that process. We looked at my CV, we pulled it apart and looked at, I think teachers, even before we graduate, we are our hardest critics. And so when we write about ourselves, your CV is like you need to sell a car kind of thing. You're selling the best version of you. And it's hard to do because we are so critical of ourselves. So having a person that you've built that rapport with, like your mentor in your 4th year, can help you through that process. Practice interview questions with you so that when you do get that opportunity, you're going to be your best foot forward going into there, and it's not the first time that you've had someone throwing questions at you that you're not able to prepare for. So from that, I was lucky enough that I was offered a permanent position. I got a golden ticket, and when you're offered that, you grab it with both hands because it is something very precious to hold on to be able to have that kind of job security as well. And then once being into that, there's always opportunities to relieve in other positions, to shadow other mentors and assistant principals. So definitely lots of avenues that you can apply for.
That's great. So there you go, guys. That's the journey. Interesting. I've just had some questions come in online. This is so interactive. So thank you. This is from Mido. 2 questions, and they're pearlers.
Okay.
So the first one
I feel like I'm in the interview seat right now going for another teaching position.
These guys might have been able to prepare for the questions I write. Anything that you guys write in and no preparation. So there's 2. The first one is, what's the difference between primary and secondary teaching?
Okay. So, well, there's the obvious grades. You know, you've got your K to 6 in your primary and your 7 to 12 in high school. I guess pulling that apart further is keep in mind that the degree that you choose, whether you choose a primary degree or a high school degree, you are not locked into that one. And what I mean by that is, so my degree was in early childhood and primary, which was fantastic as a double degree because it gave me the opportunity to go out into preschool settings and early childhood settings. I can be a room leader and a manager of those rooms. I can also do primary school of K to 6. But with my primary degree, I can also do casual teaching in a high school setting. And I could go for a permanent position for high school after I've done, I believe, don't quote me, 2 years straight full-time, maybe in a temporary and blocks and things like that. And you would apply to be recognised with the department for recognition of having experience across different grades and different KLAs or key learning areas or subject areas that a principal would sign off on you, and then you would be approved for a different classification to let you. On the flip side, vice versa, I know I have friends who have a high school degree and they are casual teaching at the moment in primary schools. So you definitely, just because you've got one avenue of education I think is the most versatile degree you can ever have, because it opens up so many different doors and different grades, and also lets you go into other avenues beyond that.
There you go, guys. Heard it straight from the horse's mouth. This next question is a little bit more alternative.
Okay.
Can an introvert become a teacher, and is there any difficulty that you can anticipate there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Teachers are the best fake it till you make it people. We are so good. You can go in and not feel as confident in that topic as you like, or you're sitting with an opportunity class in front of you and they know a lot more about that topic than you do. Don't ever be afraid to rely on your kids for that knowledge. I've learnt so much from my students beyond what I knew going into that classroom. But also I think drawing on your skills as an introvert is you are a very good listener. And if you can listen to your students in your class, and they become your kids, I refer to them as my kids.
I've heard that a lot.
They are not my students, they are my children, because I spend the most amount of time with them and at that place than I do in my own home. And you build that strong rapport, and I know even from a prac, your heart is torn out when you have to leave your fourth year prac. So don't ever think that being an introvert is a negative thing. Being a teacher, it's a very powerful thing, and whether you are a loud person or a quiet person, you are able to use that to build that rapport with those children in your room, and you will make it work for you.
That's a beautiful response, and I think I often meet a lot of introverts and they'll say I'm an introvert and have this lack of confidence. So I feel like that answer could really give someone a lot of confidence that they're actually going to be an amazing teacher because they're an introvert.
Absolutely.
So that's really beautiful to hear. The next one, I might start with you, Jess, but to get an answer from both of you would be great. What is the biggest myth or misconception about teaching? So from your perspective, just doing your prac, what would be a myth?
Well, as you heard us talking about our day a couple of questions ago, the biggest myth for me would definitely be that the teaching day is 9 till 3. So definitely not. It's a much longer day than that. But I think I'm only in my final prac. Once you get better at managing your time, getting better at being efficient, having efficient strategies in place to make decisions about activities to do in the classroom, more experience, and having that knowledge and those ideas just straight off the top of your head, rather than having to either research or even just not second guessing yourself. So a lot of the time I go home and plan and it takes me forever, but it's because I've got so many ideas and I'm thinking, what will be the best one? As Simone said earlier, teachers, we're our biggest critics. So a lot of the time I plan something and I don't want to stick with it. It's like, no, this is great, but there are probably 10 other things I could do that could or would be better, or that might engage particular students in my class more, or differentiating, changing what I'm doing for different students. So not just having one task, but adjusting that task so that more students find it accessible and can find success in their learning. So it's all that thinking going into it draws out the day, but you'll become better at that. And I know I've been telling myself for 6 weeks, I will get better, I will get better. And it has gotten
You
much
do it your whole
easier.
career, I promise you.
So I guess what she's trying to say is that it's not 9 to 3, as you can see.
It's not 9 to 3.
And then what would be the myth and misconception
So
from
I
your
probably,
perspective?
I've got two. So the first one is thinking that a Bachelor of Education for the rest of your life puts you only in a classroom. The opportunities that come from this degree is endless. If you think about, if you had to list what a teacher is good at, it is everything that any job or any corporation is looking for. You are a collaborator, you are a public speaker, you are a team builder, you're an ideas person, you are flexible. All the things that corporations look for, hardworking, you have them all in teaching. So any job loves teachers in any form, but looking solely in the education field, using myself as an example, I have been able to work volunteer-wise with the education team at the Office of the E-Safety Commissioner and work on projects around cyberbullying prevention, online safety for children in that education sector. It's given me an opportunity to be able to have the secondment to work in a position in head office and be on the front line of syllabus changes and looking at tools and processes that will support teachers and the training of teachers to influence and support best practice back in the classroom. There's opportunities for very many career paths beyond just the classroom as well. So I guess exploring yourself and finding out your skill set will change with every experience. And I think anything you're ever offered in education when you're in your career, you say yes to and work out how later, because you will make it work, and the journey and what you learn on that is the most important part that's going to help you. So I think the myth that once you pick primary, you're only primary or you're only in that classroom is not the case. And the other one I think is what a classroom looks like inside anymore. We always use our own experiences of what primary was like for me, but by the time I left my degree and was in the classroom, it was a completely different experience when I was up the front and how we did best practice, and it's changing constantly. So I think that misconception that the teacher is the vessel of all knowledge out the front and we sit in straight little rows at the board is not the case at all in classrooms.
Better that way.
Absolutely.
All right, we're getting more questions from online, but if anyone else has a question here. Okay, they're good ones too. They're just great. Thank you, online people. You're asking great questions. So the next one's from David. Have you ever felt stuck during the day not knowing how to keep the children busy, and how would you deal with this?
Ooh.
Did you want to go first?
I'm trying to think of an example from this last placement. So even today, it's not so much feeling stuck. There is so much to do during a day that there's always something that you can keep them occupied with. I don't know why, there are debates online on online teaching forums about, this colour and filler activity. It's like, when do you have time to do a colour and filler activity? It's like, I wish we had time for a colour and filler
I'm happy
activity.
if I make it through my whole lesson plan.
Exactly. But we did find a little bit of time today. And so we continued reading a story that we'd started 2 weeks ago, and it wasn't part of our reading program. So we found 5 minutes, and it was like, okay, great. And the kids were so excited because they've been waiting and waiting and waiting to get back to this story, which was just an impromptu reading that we did at the end of one evening. And it was all about their persuasive writing. So this story, which is why we started it, it was trying to convince them yes or no for different topics. And yeah, they loved it. And we just had 5 minutes of that.
For me, it's keeping in touch with your inner child. If you have little cousins or nieces or nephews, you need to know what's in, how to do the floss dance, how to use a fidget spinner. If you know these things and
what is the purpose of a fidget spinner?
A fidget spinner?
Do you just spin it? Is that
when
it?
I get stuck in my maths lesson, then we start talking about how many degrees does a fidget spinner move, and we've broken it into thirds.
All right.
And
What's a turn?
anti-clockwise
Stage
and
one.
clockwise. So if you know what's in, what's hip, what's happening, listen when you're on that lunchtime duty. It's not just a safety thing. Talk to the kids around you. You know, you want to be seen as the cool teacher. No, we're never
Back in
cool.
my day.
We're never cool.
It was Pokemon.
But if you pretend you're cool, they like that. And if you get Pokemon's back in.
What?
Oh, Pokemon cards.
Pokemon-
You need to get them back
Pokemon just
out.
went out.
You'll be the coolest teacher in town.
Oh wow, I'm so surprised.
But if you know what's in and you get stuck, then whatever skill that week you're trying to teach or they haven't quite picked up, we relate it to that. If it was the NRL that week and it was the scores and we're going to do statistics, and if it's fidget spinners, we're doing angles, and if it was the floss dance, then we're going to tie it into creative arts and we're going to be doing beat counts and you're going to create your own one. So if you know what's hip and you listen in the playground, you're never short of ideas.
There you go. So I hope that answered your question. It was David, yeah. Okay, let's ask another one from online, from Helen. Do you change schools throughout the different pracs, or do you stay at the same one? And do you have a different mentor along the way?
So yes, I've been at a different school for each of my placements, and I've had a different mentor teacher. So the mentor teacher is someone from the school. So because it's been different schools, yes, there's also been a different mentor teacher. We also have a university supervisor that comes out during those placements and is a support from the university side of things, and that has also changed throughout the placements. Some people might find that off-putting because they're thinking, oh, I feel I've built a relationship with this other person and I'd like to be able to continue that and I feel comfortable with them. But it's actually a really positive thing because it gives you more opportunities to build a network of teachers, of people in your industry who are there to support you and who have seen your experience so that you might use them as a referee later on down the track. As Simone said earlier, they might help you prepare for interviews, all those. It just depends on the type of relationship that you build with them. Yeah.
I'm just looking at the questions. We're getting more coming in, but I'm going to take over here. Oh, one over here? Okay, great.
Relating to the
Yeah.
tracks, how is your prac structured here at ACU? Like how many do you do?
Oh, that's a great
What
question.
stages
Yep,
of
very good question. So I've done technically 5 placements. So my first was an early childhood placement, and I started mid-year for my degree, so at the middle of the year. So for mine specifically...
Was that first year or?
No, not until the start of the end of second year. Yeah, the end of second year. But that was because I started mid-year. So if I hadn't started mid-year, it would have been the start.
In our first year, there isn't observational prac.
In the straight primary
In the straight,
degree.
yeah. When you
Yes.
get going,
Yeah.
straight at the beginning of the year.
But what I would always recommend is you don't have to, if you want observation, approach a school. If you just want observation, you don't need to rely on the university for that anyway. You can approach a school and just talk to them and say, hi, do you mind if I come in? This is what I'm thinking of doing. Even before you start the degree, if you wanted to, you could always do that. And I think I didn't do it, but I think I probably should have. I think it would be a really good idea if, think of things like applying to be a teacher's aide. You might start off volunteering and helping reading recovery programs in schools. Build those relationships during your degree, not only so that your network is laid out for you when you finish, but also because you'll learn so much from being in the classroom, from the teachers that you're seeing, from the different students and the way they build relationships with different people, with each other as well. It's so valuable. But I started with the early childhood placement, and that was, off the top of my head, I think it was 3 weeks, 5 weeks? 5 weeks. But it was 10 individual days and then a 3-week block. And then my second placement was a primary placement. I did upper primary for my first placement, which I really loved, year 6. And that was, again, I'm pretty sure it was 10 individual days and then a 3-week block again. And then I had a baby practicum, so 0 to 2 in early childhood, and that was just a 3-week block, no observation days. And now my straight primary, again, no observation days, just straight 6-week block. And even though I say no observation days, they still ease you into it. So my teacher was very, very easygoing and was like, no, you know what? You can have a few days to get to know the children, build relationships with them, maybe do small group teaching, and then start taking the whole class for a few lessons and build it up from there.
And building on that, I mean, I think back to why I chose ACU when I did. And I think, one, the double degree was a great opportunity because the 0 to 5 age part in the early childhood gave me the background knowledge of the developmental path of children for when I took a kindergarten class. I knew what they should have come in with and could see the gaps. So that was helpful. And the other part was that ACU, when I was looking, was one of the only unis around that actually had practicums in the first year of the degree. And I know that sounds daunting at first. You think, oh God, I haven't learnt everything. I can't be in there yet.
Get out and do it.
Get out there straight away.
Get it done.
Because you are learning what you're learning in theory. It's great until you get out there. And you need to see it in practice and see the practice of different people. And ACU is great that when they put you in a practicum, they put you at different schools, cross-sector, Catholic, independent, public. I was in a year 6 class, then I was on a kindergarten class the next year. Then my community engagement one was in what we call an SSP, or a specialised setting school, and they were for children with high intellectual disabilities. And I'm telling you that having practicum in that first year gave me so much more than if I'd been 3 years down the track on a degree and then only just stepped into a classroom. So if you can step in before your degree, even better, but you will learn so much more and find that spark. And you won't know what I'm talking about, but once you step in that classroom and you feel it in your gut, don't you? You just know that that's where you're meant to be. It'll drive you through. Yeah.
I did say 5 and I only said 4. And it's because I forgot my community engagement while I was talking. So I actually did mine in Thailand. So I went to Thailand and taught all ages we worked in temple preschools, we went to different schools. Some of the schools had, so primary schools.
This is part of your community engagement?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that, and that was for 2 straight weeks in Thailand. And in one class we had about only 9 children, but their ages were from like 8 to 16 in the one class teaching in English. So yeah, very, very valuable experiences.
Yeah, so for those of you who aren't aware, there is a community engagement subject that all teachers will do, and that could be here, it could be overseas, it could be in anything, but with you guys, yeah, doing it in a classroom is the best place to do it. All right, I've got a question here from Erin. And it's a question about technology. So I might ask you first, Simone, is what are your experiences and opinions in regards to technology in the classroom? Is it something you enjoy, or you prefer to steer clear of using technology?
So when I left and I took on my teacher
great
degree,
questions.
making me think on my feet, I was the youngest teacher there, and so automatically I was the computer coordinator. And when that blue cable wasn't working or the PowerPoint wasn't on at the interactive board, I was the go-to call girl to fix those things. I will tell you now, if you pick up that title of computer coordinator, you can never get rid of it. You were stuck with that tech role at every school for the rest of your life. But I learned a lot with that technology role. In terms of its place in a classroom, I think as a teacher, having a very strong idea of what the purpose is and why you want it there. So not having technology to say it's in the room, that there's an iPad on the desk or there's an interactive board. Any interactive board, if it's not used properly, is just a overpriced whiteboard. So I think the important thing is, what's the purpose and what do you want out of it? So if I think about my 5-6 class, the stage 3, we used a lot of Google Classroom and those kind of online cloud-based resources. And I use that as a collaboration point and personalised projects, a way for the students to have a voice that maybe don't want to put their hand up in the classroom, that chat field was a way of us talking together in the introvert or the extrovert way that suited them, a way of developing those research skills. At the end of the day, our job as teachers is to set these kids up that when they come out of school, they have what they need to make it in that world. Now, that world, we don't know what it's going to look like. The jobs are going to change. and their skill set. But if we can teach them how to be on top of what is now and teach them the skill sets of how to collaborate through those online sources, how to research, how to look at websites and know what's valid and what's not. So I think of things like Wiki and those kind of ones. I've done a project where I typed in fake information on that Wiki page and saw what came up in projects, and then we had a really good conversation about proper valid sources of information online. So I think technology definitely has a place because it's the world we live in. If you're ignoring it, then you're denying the skill set that those kids need when they leave school. But it's about knowing why you want it there, being very selective about what piece of device to use, and also being very on top about security and safety with those, that you need to know the tricks that those kids know as well, so that you can create the safe environment of the use of that technology in the classroom.
Great, thank you very much. So I've got another question here from Midol, but that's actually my last question as well.
Can I just add in
Read
something
your
on the
mind.
Yeah,
technology?
please do.
It's also mandated. So if you're not using
Yes.
ICT,
Yeah.
there's a problem.
Yes.
Because the government requires us to do it. We have policy documents
there
that
you
say
go.
Absolutely.
you must use this. Students need to be 21st century learners. To be a responsible teacher, we need to follow those policy
And if you
documents. It's
want
one
some
about
light
gender
reading,
capabilities.
the New South Wales Science and Technology syllabus document,
Get onto
if you
it.
open it up and do start having a read of those documents, because that's what you live and breathe and guides your practice,
It'll be your life.
it is all in there about technology and the use and the skill sets that you need to embed in those great kids.
Great, thanks guys, love to hear it. Up the back here we've got a question.
Oh, I knew this question would come up with my job.
Is NAPLAN going to be online or not?
So it is a tricky question at this point.
Let's start off with what is NAPLAN?
NAPLAN. So NAPLAN is the National Assessment Platform of Literacy and Numeracy. It was a paper-based test that is transitioning to online. I can tell you from being a trainer across the cross sectors that the movement is still to online, but that the mandated date has been pushed to 2021 instead of 2020, and that it is definitely still something that is moving forward.
Okay, great. Okay, so you were a teacher.
Still
you're
a
always
teacher. I'm always a teacher.
Your full-time occupation was as a teacher, and
Mm-hmm.
now you're on secondment doing some other things that you've spoken about. But what sort of got you there? What inspired you to make that change? And do you think you'll go back to teaching?
Once a teacher, always a teacher. It's definitely an occupation that is, well, it's more than an occupation. It's just who you are. It becomes your mission and your life values. So I will always be a teacher.
Yeah.
I miss the children. I miss that interaction that I get in the classroom. But I am enjoying having the experience of being on the other side of education, where I get to assist in training programs and resources for teachers that's going to improve the practice. That although I'm not with those kids in person, I know that what I'm doing on the projects that I'm working on is going to improve practice, which is going to enhance the learning of all kids across the state. And so that I still have that value of education and
teaching big
impacting.
kids now.
I'm teaching big kids, I'm teaching teachers to help our little kids. And as long as every day it's about improving and supporting those students, how that looks doesn't matter to me, as long as that mission's always being met.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've got another one for both of you. So Mido asked a question online. That's going to be our last question, so good one. But for both of you, I would love to get a little snapshot, little nugget of advice so there's a lot of prospective students here. What would be your nugget of advice for going into teaching?
I think what I said before about definitely getting in there early into a classroom and seeing what it's like, building those networks, and really thinking, is this something that I'm happy to be doing? Is there something I'm passionate about? Because to be a teacher, you're really hardworking. You work with a massive team of people, children and adults, and you need to really want to be there to stay in the industry. So getting in early is definitely the thing that I would recommend.
For me, it would be what I tell my students, which is the hardest thing to swallow as a teacher because your hardest critic is resilience. It doesn't matter what point you are in your career, whether you are day one fresh out of uni, you're day one on your prac, you are 30 years experienced in the classroom, you are still going to have that lesson plan that went wrong. You can plan everything under the sun, you can have it set up and counted and everything, and that day something goes wrong. We've had wet weather at recess. Someone's borrowed the resources. I was planning to print that resource and the photocopier's crashed. Teeth falling out. I've had it. Amount of tooth fairy visits that we have had in my classroom is amazing. I need to start cashing in on that with the tooth fairy, I think. But you can do everything right and tick every box, and it still goes wrong. There's something that's happened in the playground that's come into the classroom. He's using my favourite coloured pair of scissors. I was supposed to get the green scissors. Now I'm stuck with blue scissors, and we will have complete meltdowns over those. You will think that they are ready for that lesson, and you start teaching it, and we're looking at, cutting up, making three-dimensional objects, and you realise we've forgotten what an octagon is. And so my whole beautiful lesson of 3D objects, I just drop it. Don't keep going with something that's not working. Dump it and work with what you've got. If you've got to go back to teaching a triangle has 3 corners and 3 sides, then that's what we do. There's no point me teaching pyramids if we don't know what a triangle is. Yeah. So please don't think that any teacher is perfect. None of us are perfect. There is no perfect lesson. There is no perfect or one answer or one approach. Be willing to dump it on the go, be flexible. And you will have that day, and I'm going to say it because I wish someone said it to me when I left my degree, where you go home and you cried and you were so torn up because you put hours of effort into that lesson and it all went wrong, or you felt like you didn't teach those kids that thing that you wanted them to get that day. There is always another day, tomorrow's another day, and you pick yourself up and keep going. So resilience is probably the biggest key.
That's great advice.
I had those days.
I had it a couple of weeks ago.
Very, very recently. This week we did revision in maths. And we did revision on some of the things I'd been teaching them that I just thought, oh my gosh, they're just not getting it. And it was killing me at the time. Because I was thinking, why? Like, we've gone over so many different things. We've talked about it so many different ways. We've done different activities.
We did it yesterday.
To understand it. Why are we not getting this? The last 2 days we're doing revision. Yesterday we were doing revision on columns and rows based on our area program. They all got it. Barely re-explained it. There was some explicit teaching at the start, but they all got it. They were all able to do the task, and they could all identify a column, and they could all identify a row. And then again, the next day we did position and left and right. They were all struggling on their path, on their maps. 2 weeks ago, today, they all got it. So I'm today thinking, why on earth was I so upset 2-3 weeks ago when they had no idea, when really they were just off.
So resilience
They
can pay
did
off.
know.
There you
They
go.
were off.
There you go.
Sometimes you just need to give them some time.
And the wind does affect children. That is not a myth.
The wind, the rain,
That is not a myth in education.
temperature.
Weather does change them.
What do you mean children? I think it's everything. I'm going to ask you a future students ACU question. Okay. So this is just one of those.
test.
All right. I was just wondering why you guys picked ACU.
Do you want me to start?
Go for it.
So I picked ACU mainly because it's a smaller university. So I was coming back to uni after working for 6 years. So I'd been out of school, worked for 6 years full time, and then thought, no, I really want to go to university. a very important person in my life, my now fiance. Sorry, I'm not wearing his ring. When we first met 4.5 years ago, we had a conversation about I wanted to go to university, and he was all for it and thinking, oh, what do you want to do? And I was like, oh, well, I've been thinking of teaching, like education. I've been thinking about it for 5 years. And he was like, you should do it. I was like, oh, should I? 3 months later, I quit my job and I enrolled at university. And yeah, as I said, the reason I chose ACU was because it was smaller, and I felt that having been away from study for so long, a smaller environment where I didn't have to fight 250 other people for my lecturers' times and my tutors' times would be really beneficial for me. I loved school, especially high school. I had gotten really well with all my teachers and I really enjoyed it. So I thought small is better for me.
So building on that, very similar. One part for me was looking forward beyond the degree. What would give me the most paths? Because we all know 4 years down the track, I may have a different direction that I want to go. It's very rare for one person to have one career in their life these days now. So which one would give me more? And the double degree of the early childhood and primary was something only provided at a very few universities. It's a lot more now, but when I was looking, there was only 2, and ACU was one of those. And for that, I felt that if I got out, I could casual teach, I could go into early childhood. If it was hard to get a position in primary, I had the early childhood to fall on, and both ways. So that's why I chose a double degree. In terms of ACU, the idea of a smaller university, being known to my lecturers, they will know you by name. Every single one of you in your class, they will know. That rapport that you build with your mentor teacher on prac, it is actually the same experience you have here at ACU. When you go to your tutorials, when you go to your lectures, they will know you by not even halfway through a semester. If you raise your hand in a giant lecture hall like this, they will call you out by name and know who you are. That was important to me because I wanted a tailored education. I wanted to be known, I wanted to be supported. And the idea of a massive university where I was a number was something that I didn't want for me. So ACU is definitely a place that it's a community. They believe in supporting every single one of you, finding what's unique and great about you and bringing that out further so that it's a part of you when you leave as a teacher. And that's what they are good at.
And I might add on to that, because all of my lecturers have really cared and I've had really good relationships with them, but it's on you as well.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
if you want to be, just to know it, they may still know your name, but you could have no relationship with them if you just decide to walk in late, leave early, and never speak to them. So I would highly encourage you to have the conversation with them about whatever it may be. Say hi, talk to them. They're a person too, and get their insight into their own experience and keep building that network.
And if you build that rapport, it extends forever beyond uni. So I've been out now for 7.5 years, 8 years, I think, and I am still connected through Twitter, through emails, through LinkedIn with my different lecturers. If there's a paper that I've read or a new study, I will still reach out and say, what's your opinion on this? I'd like to know your input. What's the latest? Am I missing something? So if you want that strong connection and you want that community, like you said, Jess, if you put it in, you will get it back at ACU.
It's also a continuous interview prep, because if you're constantly liaising with your lecturers about the pedagogy, about the professional learning, about whatever it is, you're using the terminology so it's fresh in your mind, and you're engaging in professional conversations, which will help you in interviews, it'll help you once you're working, it'll help you for your exams, because it's something that you verbalize it in your own way. So if you're constantly saying things, then it sets in.
And it's what you do in a school. That professional talk that you have and that guidance from a mentor, you do the same in a school. Everybody is learning from everybody else, looking in each other's classroom, observing another lesson, asking about, gee, you got really good results out of your kids in that topic. That's something I'm struggling in. So
Forever learning.
yeah.
I love hearing about that collaboration. Sounds really great, and which sort of leads us on to the last question, and then we're going to wrap it up after this one. And it was a question from one of our audience members, asked a few questions before Mido, and it was also something that we'd prepared already. What's the most rewarding thing about being a teacher?
I have some of those in my bag. Just when it's not just that they say to you, like, we really love you or we miss you, but it's the relationship that you're building with them, that they want to come to school, not because let's be honest, they don't really want to do their learning a lot of the time, but you are one of the reasons that they want to come to school. I just think that is a beautiful thing, that you can make their day brighter and make school a happier place for them to be in. That's probably the most rewarding thing to me.
Yeah, and the rapport that you build with their families as well. You may see a child for 7 years of their education and you see them finish year 6 and you will cry. I have cried at every year 6 graduation speech I have ever said for these kids.
all grown up.
They do, I know. But I've seen them since they were 4 and a half.
So it looks like
But it's the little milestones. So you've got that kid who just can't get it, where I have taught it in 30 different ways using every single type of material. I've done area with Pokemon cards on a table because they love Pokemon cards. I've tried everything, and then just one day it clicked. And gee, that's rewarding because you have put your whole heart and soul into that child for that skill, or they can finally write their name with that letter the right way. Those little moments are the ones that are going to keep you going when you're black under the eyes and you're writing reports, or you're trying to mark kindergarten sentences and you can't fully decipher what type of language they're writing in at the moment because there's some stars and some numbers and I think that's a number. Those little moments are what will get you through those hard times when you are tired and you are exhausted. You will get to the end of your term and you have nothing left in you. But that actually means you gave it everything. So those little moments.
Definitely.
The little moments. I like
The
that.
little
That's
moments.
awesome. We do a lot of work with schools, and I'm always going into schools and meeting teachers. And I could maybe guess that being in a school is a good place to be as well. Is it a nice environment?
It would depend. If we're being honest, it would depend. I'm so fortunate in my placement, and my last one actually, that I've had beautiful schools. They've been so warm, so friendly. The staff rooms are a lovely place to be. I did have one day at a school that wasn't so friendly, and it wasn't that they were overtly cold, but they weren't welcoming either. So it would just depend where you are. And it's not that I would take a full-time job in that school. But my goal, if I was taking a full-time job in that school, would be to make it a warmer place for placement students coming in,
For me to explain it would be, think back to when you've been in your classroom and there are some teachers you click with and some that you don't. And there are some subjects you like and some subjects you hate. The workforce and school environments are exactly the same. There are some teachers you will click with. There are some that you see it differently, but you're all there for the same mission and the same value of those kids. And that's what gels a school together, even if you may not be the best friend click environment. And also keeping in mind, every school is different. There are going to be ones of lower socioeconomic, higher disability interventions. Those kind of things impact on an environment as well. You will be faced with times where your heart will be broken because you see kids that are doing it tough in life, but you're there and you can only do what you can do when you are there. So it's important to remember that every school's different, and also every school's leader is different. Every principal will lead their school in a different way, have a different ideology, different pedagogy ideas of how they want to see the school go, how those kids will learn. You will fit some schools better than others. So also, before you go out and do get a permanent job in a school or do a big temporary block, Ask questions, speak to the staff there, look at their school website, find out their approach and their values of the school, and does it fit you as a teacher? Because if it's not going to fit, you're not going to be happy there, because you do things differently and you believe things differently in how it should be done. Don't try and force. It's that idea of the square peg in a round hole. It doesn't work. So find a leader that works for you. Find a school that fits you and you fit it. Don't try and force yourself into an environment that teaches in a way that doesn't fit the way that you believe or way you do.